Hello guys, welcome to the show. Listen, I get right into it. I want these guys. There's guys out there. There's like Harry Dent, you know. Uh, they're deflation. They believe in deflation, and they're not. These guys are really smart. They're not stupid. Guys like David Stockman, they can see this deflation coming. I can too, but there's a little twist to it. So I drew this chart for you guys. And I'm going to go over the chart real quick. This chart is by no means to scale. I just drew it with a crayon, this afternoon to show you guys. And to show you what we're in right now. Ever since 2008 until now, we've been bumping along in sort of some weird type of stagflating economy. It's not really inflation. It's not really deflation. It's almost a little bit of both. Certain sectors are deflating slightly while other sectors of the economy are inflating slightly. Nobody has any money, so everything is stagnant. It's almost the parts that are inflating is almost like stagflation. This is what we've been going along with, and the Federal Reserve has actually been riding this with their quantitative easing programs and stuff. They haven't been injecting enough money in to actually bring a real economic recovery. They brought a quasi-economic recovery. Quasi, meaning it's not the real McCoy. It's not a real economic recovery. Basically, they've been bottom bouncing. The economy fell and it died, and they've been bouncing along the bottom for years now. Now the Fed's boxed into a trap. They've boxed themselves into a trap of their own making, and we're getting ready to have a crash. And so what I drew here, I drew the crash that's coming and what's going to happen. Now, you see, we've been going through this stagflation, and I drew it in as light green. This moderate, very slight inflation out there that is actually a bit higher than 2%. It's probably more in the order of 4%, the inflation that we've had, but it's more or less in certain sectors of the economy. Meanwhile, other sectors of the economy are actually not doing so well, and they're having a very slight deflation. So we've been bouncing through that, and that's reflected in the light green. Now, when the crash starts to occur, when it drops below 20,000, the stock market, and believe me, it's coming. It's not yet, but it's coming. We're going to enter into this green stage right here, which is early stage deflation. It's not stagflation anymore. There's no stagflation to it. There's no part of the economy that's got any sort of inflation. It's going to be obvious that all sectors of the economy that we've lost a little bit of inflation that we had, and now the economy is actually shrinking. We're in a crisis mode. The stock market is still falling. It's down 20,000. People are panicking. People are scared. People are starting to buy gold, silver, and the U.S. dollar. They're dumping things like cryptocurrency. They're dumping the stock market. Bond market's crashing too. Everything is in disarray, and we're entering into the early stages of deflation. But the Federal Reserve, amazing enough, is going to try to chart the course that they're still on right now. They're not going to quite panic yet. They're going to be keeping more of a cool head than everyone else. All the investors out there and everybody else is going to be starting to panic. But the Federal Reserve, they're going to be sitting and holding tight. So it's going to fall down through this period of early stage deflation, and they're going to sit and hold tight, and the market's going to start to bounce a little bit. See, I got the bounce in here, right at the early stage deflation, right at the bottom edge of the early stage deflation. See the market starting to bounce back. That's that red line is what the market's doing. So the market actually starts to bounce back a little bit. And then all of a sudden, she's going to start to really crash again the second time. And the Fed will have held their course. At the bottom of this second crash, we're going to enter into real deflation. Honest to God, we're going to go through this slight deflationary period that's reflected in light blue. We're going to go through the early stage deflation, through this slight deflation that's reflected in real blue and light blue, and then we're going to enter into the dark blue or purplish looking stuff, which is the actual deflation. It's real, honest to God deflation. It's frightening. It's just like what occurred during the Great Depression in the United States. Everybody will be losing their jobs. The banks will be starting to fold up. The economy will be starting to shut down. The deflation will be shutting it down. And you see this little bounce in the market right here? There's going to be a little tiny bounce in the market, even still. But you know what? The Fed is going to then react. They're going to react. They're going to come in. They're going to change. They're going to change their entire policy. They're going to go back to being uber doves. In fact, they're going to go back. They're going to do a 180-degree turn from what they're doing right now. They're going to do everything that they can do. They're going to bend over backwards to stimulate the economy, and they are going to go into panic mode. They're going to panic then. At that point, they are going to panic at the bottom of this, and it'll continue on even when they panic and they do something about it. It's still going to continue on a little bit longer before it starts to turn around. And they will turn it around with tremendous amounts of money that they're going to inject into the system. Unbelievable amounts of money. And then we're going to start descending, we're going to start climbing the same ladder that we went down into that pit. We're going to have to tread through the same spots coming up out. We're going to have to go through the slight deflation, and then we're on the way out, and then we're going to have to go through the early stage deflation. And then we're going to enter into the very slight stagnating period like we're in now, where the economy has come out of the hole and it's improved. And by that point in time, all of these people out there are going to start to laud the Fed. You've done it, Fed. Thank you very much. You have fixed the economy, and we are now on the way to a recovery. And there's going to be hope again. Hope is going to come back to the market again. Everybody's going to be hopeful. The stock market's going to be on its way up, because this is the stock market here, and it's going to be on its way up, and everything else is going to be on its way up. People are going to be getting jobs, and it's not going to be like the stagflation that we've had all along now, where we've been slowly either bouncing along level or we've been descending. No, this stagflation, we're going to be on our way up. So we're going to pass right through it, and we're going to enter into a period here that's reflected in yellow. I drew it in yellow. And why I drew it in yellow is because it's going to be something that we haven't had before in a long time, and that's a recovery. And it's going to feel good. It's going to be money floating around the system. The velocity of money is going to be really, really fast. Everybody's going to be spending money. Everybody's going to be borrowing money from the banks. But at the same time, people are going to be losing faith in savings. They're going to see the inflation, and it's going to be really hot. And they're going to say, hey, you know what? I'm not saving money, not in this environment. I'm going to spend, and everybody's going to be spending. Prices are going to be rising like crazy. We're going to be in the middle of a real economic recovery, and then it's going to get worse. It's going to go into the orange phase here. The 5 to 10% inflation per year, annual per year period. And that's not going to last very long. As you can see, we're only going to be in that phase just for a little while, but the economic recovery is going to be heating up even faster. Unbelievable how good it's going to be. Everybody's going to be wanting to take credit for it. Donald Trump loves to take credit, so he'll be taking credit because he'll probably still be our president. And everybody will be taking credit. The Fed will be taking credit. And then we're going to move into the red phase, where the economy is blazing hot. Unbelievably blazing hot. And everybody is just going to be going, wow. But we're going to start entering into 50% inflation per year. And it's only going to get hotter from there, the inflation. Then it's going to start to run away, and we're going to start to lose control over it. That's when things are actually going to start to get worse again, because people won't afford to be able to buy things. And that's when sales are going to start to slump again. And we're going to start to go into a new kind of depression. It's called a crack-up boom. It's called an inflationary depression. And the economy is going to start to falter again from the fact that prices are rising so fast that it's going to be a hyperinflation. We're going to turn into a Venezuela at that point. And see, the thing, everybody's been talking about hyperinflation for years now. And they've been pointing to the reason for hyperinflation coming. They say, well, we see the hyperinflation coming because we see a loss in jobs. Or we see the hyperinflation coming because sales are off this year for retail sales. Retail sales are way off this year. This means there's a hyperinflation coming. No, a stagnating, poor, weak economy will never make a hyperinflation. It only descends toward deflation. People get scared. They don't want to spend their money. Values of money start to go up. The whole thing descends toward a deflation. That's not inflationary. Where you get inflationary is when people lose confidence in the purchasing power of the dollar, and when people lose confidence in the purchasing power of their currencies, and at the same time you've got an economy that's on its way up, that's moving faster, the velocity of money's picking up, and that's what's causing people to lose confidence in the purchasing power of their currencies. So now, what about these guys here with the deflation? Well, the problem, and this is the reason why it's been so hard to forecast this for so many, and there's actually been debates between economists whether it'll be deflation or inflation. I had a show on here a little while ago where I asked my audience, what do you think? Do you think it'll be inflation or deflation? And this is why it's been so hard to predict, is because we're going to get both. We're going to get a deflation, not much unlike the Great Depression of the 1930s, just after 1929. And then it's going to pick up out of that, and we're going to have our hyperinflation. In fact, that's the trigger mechanism. The deflation is the trigger mechanism that leads us into our hyperinflation. That's what does it. The deflation triggers the hyperinflation because it triggers the government to react. You see, I'm going to explain to you a little bit more about this. Back in 2008, when we had that great deflation, that was a deflationary event, by the way, guys. Very deflationary. And it looks something very similar to this chart I've drawn here. That's what happened in 2008. And very similar thing happened on the other side of that when they did the stimulus programs and they did all the quantitative easing. They did quantitative easing 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, and Operation Twist. And they stimulated the economy with tremendous amounts of liquidity. What happened was they were starting to lead toward a hyperinflation, I should say. But it didn't happen because what they did was they only brought, see this chart where it shows it coming up out, and see the blue deflation? Well, they never really got to the blue deflationary stage. They got to the light blue, the powder blue color in the 2008 crisis. They only got down to the powder blue slight deflation, and they panicked. Now, one of the things I got to say right here is, when they get down to the dark blue, the real deflation, you think they're not going to panic this time? They panicked last time when they were only in the light blue. Now, see, the same thing happened when they come up out of it on the other side and did all their stimulus packages and all of their quantitative easing and everything else. What they did was they went through these colors, just like on this chart. They went through the blue, the green, and they went all the way up to the light green, which says stagflation. But they stopped their stimulus program short of taking it into the yellow, orange, and red. And the reason why is because this is like a bouncing ball. See this market that's up and it flies down and it hits the ground? Well, if you go to Kmart's, and you know they got them big square things that's full of balls there, those big beach balls and stuff. If you grab one of those balls and you throw it at the ground, the harder you throw it at the ground, the higher it's going to bounce on the other side. If you throw it really hard, it'll bounce all the way up to the ceiling of the Walmart, and you'll get a store employee come in and say, "You'll have to put those balls back, sir." Please don't do that anymore, sir. You know? But if you just bounce them moderately, it'll just come chest high. Well, that's the way with this. This crisis that happened in 2008 was like the ball flying down at the ground, but it only had enough force to go into the light blue. Right? And so when it bounced up the other side, it only bounced up into the light green, which is where inflation begins. See, it says on my chart, inflation begins at stagflation. So you just got a very moderate amount of inflation, maybe 2 or 3%. Well, that's as far up as the ball bounced because it didn't bounce down with enough force. This situation we got this time is going to bounce the ball down so much harder down into the deep blue deflation that the reaction of the ball coming up on the other side, the ball's going to bounce that much higher. It's going to bounce up into the yellow, red, and orange this time. So it's that trigger reaction. It's that equal and opposite force. They have other things that they use. There's a law in the universe that for every action there's an equal and opposite reaction. And so the harder that this market falls, the steeper the curve climbing on the other side when it comes out. And last time, it almost led us to hyperinflation. There's an awful lot of people out there that were worried. They were buying silver like crazy. You remember they drove it up to $50. Well, this time the ball's going to come up that much harder. So look, $50, and plus just think about how much difference of purchasing power in the dollar is now. It's not unreasonable to think $100 silver or higher. Really. $100, $150 silver is not unreasonable on this time when the market goes up and the inflation actually begins. And we start to get 5 to 10% inflation. Along in that period right there where we got 5 to 10% inflation and we're in the orange, silver's probably going to be like $150. Well, it will go higher when we get in the red. But the problem is, by that time, the government will probably see a lot of people have been selling silver and making massive profits, and the government's going to probably come in with a windfall profits tax of some sort or another, where they're probably going to take 50% of your profits off of your silver, or more, maybe 70% they'll take. It doesn't matter that they weren't the ones who saved it, that they weren't the ones who put it away, that they weren't the ones to do, but they'll take all the profit, or a good chunk of your profit, if you wait until they get the legislation passed. And what always makes government pass legislation is when they see profit to be made. So when it gets into the orange and people start making the profit, that's when they'll start thinking about putting in the legislation to stop you from getting the profit. They're not going to come from house to house and confiscate your silver and your gold. It's not going to happen. Can you imagine them coming from... First off, most people would not be willing to give it to them in the first place, but you can imagine them coming to your door, knocking and saying, "We want Aunt Martha's heirloom earrings out of silver she gave you in the 1940s. And the wife is going to say, "You're not getting those earrings over my dead body." And they'd have to go to every house and try to get every little trinket that people have in silver. Good luck with that. America would revolt. The entire nation would revolt. Because so many people have silver jewelry, and a lot of that jewelry means a lot to them. They have forks and knives and stuff that their grandmother gave them and stuff like that. Good luck with getting it. They're not going to go that route because they know how much trouble they would have. They know that the people would revolt against it. The people would find it abhorrent, and it wouldn't be a fly. It's not going to fly. They never take the hard path, the government. They always take the easy path. And the easy path is to license and register all the dealers that deal in silver and make anybody who buys or sells more than a certain amount, maybe, I don't know, a couple $1,000s worth, to sign papers, and the government knows where and when you purchased it or whatever. And to keep track of you. It's much easier, and then put a tax on you. levy a huge tax on you. It's much easier to do. Okay? And so, anyway, this shows basically what I'm thinking about what's going to happen with this. The inflation and deflation. Now I'm going to talk about cryptocurrencies and where and gold and silver and where they stand on this chart. Okay, you see the stagflation in the first part of the chart, which leading to the fall in the stock markets. Well, you see the spot there where the stagflation, the light green, changes into dark green, early stage deflation. Well, right there where it changes, that's 20,000 on the stock market, roughly. That's the point two things are going to happen. Number one, cryptocurrencies are going to drop in price. Right there. They're going to sell them. And gold and silver is going to start to go up in price at that spot. Now, when the thing bottoms down into the deflation, down in the very bottom, and you're in that dark purple, that dark blue color down in there, cryptocurrency is going to be at its cheapest. And the stock market will be at its bottom. And you'll be in your deflation, and the government will be starting to react. When we're coming up the other side, where it says coming out of deflation, and we're in the blue and going back into the green, back into the light green, the yellow, and the orange, and the red, all the way up there, cryptocurrency is going to be climbing in price again. And at that point, gold and silver is going to be climbing in price too. So gold and silver is going to be the big winner, because as soon as we enter into the early stage deflation and we're on our way down toward deflation, gold and silver is going to do pretty good. Not super good, but pretty good. But when we cross over and we start to come out of the deflation, we head up that big mountain on the other side where the hyperinflation is going to begin, gold, silver, and cryptocurrencies, all three of them are going to take off. And all three of them are going to do excellent. What's not going to do good is when we get into that area where it's red, orange, and yellow, is the dollar. The dollar is going to proceed to start dying. So there you have it, folks. Thank you for listening. Like and subscribe, and we'll catch you in the next show. Bye.